Greetings, fellow man. Servus Männer. It's Red Bull Germany again. Today I want to continue my series on Angela Merkel, whereas I spoke about her origins and her family background mainly in my first video that you can check out also if you haven't done so yet. I want to talk today about the time between the reunification of Germany and her becoming the chancellor. Actually, I want to more focus about how she maneuvered herself into a position that she could potentially become the chancellor. So in 1989 it was the time of civil unrest in the Eastern German Republic, in the GDR. People took to the streets because they were fed up with being locked into their own country and by general poverty and just the notion that the system doesn't work anymore and is completely undemocratic. Angela Merkel, however, did not participate in the protest. She was a busy bee working in her research institute. In fact, when the people went to the checkpoint, because it was announced that they could travel to the western part of Berlin at that time, she just went, like every week on that particular day, to a sauna with her friend. So she actually missed those grand scenes of reunification for the first time, when the people of East Berlin could actually enter the West. Nevertheless, now that she had learned that things are in motion, she quickly started to join one of the new forming democratic parties for the first free and the last election that the GDR would ever see. Now, she joined a party called Demokratischer Aufbruch, or DA, which I would translate as Democratic Awakening. It's not literally awakening, but Aufbruch means kind of making yourself ready to start or something, getting up. Democratic Beginning could also be a translation. So anyway, she more or less accidentally, quote unquote, joined this party, as she as a scientist had knowledge with computers, and the average person back in '89, and I think especially in the GDR, had no computer skills. So according to her own account, she basically unboxed computers there. And the person who took her in there basically was a very good friend of her father. Who was, as you remember from the first video maybe, a very socialist, communist pastor of the Socialist Lutheran Church of Eastern Germany. So as also in the Third Reich, the Lutheran Church was actually much more open to the regime as the Catholic Church. This is one of the weaknesses of the Lutheran Church, that they align themselves with political authority much more easily than the Roman Catholic Church. Now, and also in the communist dictatorship, as in the fascist dictatorship before, the Lutheran Church collaborated quite heavily with the political authorities, and nobody basically represented this fact better than the father of Angela Merkel. And this guy now, who took her in, Wolfgang Schnur, he worked for almost 25 years for the MFS, the Stasi. So he was a secret informant. He was working for the communists as a spy, as a lawyer in contact with the Lutheran Church. So he was basically controlling the Lutheran Church and the seminar that Merkel's father also led. And he was a lawyer and a representative of the Lutheran Church and a spy for the Stasi at the same time. And I say it again, he was on very friendly terms with the very communist father of Merkel. So I think it's not coincidence that this guy all of a sudden took in this young physicist woman who is coincidentally the daughter of a certain Horst Kasner. Okay, but that this guy actually worked for the Stasi became known a couple of days before this election, and so this party actually didn't even get 1% of the votes. So it was a smashing defeat for the party DA that Merkel had joined just before the last elections of the GDR. So what happened then is actually also a big coincidence again, because this party DA, they had a voting alliance with the Christian Democratic Party, CDU, that is a Western German party. And they were also a bloc party in the Eastern Republic. Because it was a bloc party, they didn't want to take the chances to maybe lose the election, because the people of the GDR would think that they had been collaborators. So they had this alliance with the newly established party, DA. They couldn't really anticipate that Schnur was exposed as a Stasi spy just a couple of days before the election. So the CDU actually won a lot of votes, in the 40%. And then it just so happened that she became the press secretary then of the head of the CDU in the East, Lothar de Maizière. So in fact, the entire party, DA, was joining the CDU then after the elections, which means that Merkel basically at that time automatically became a member of the CDU, her party that she is heading right now. Now, as Merkel's physics institute was not really fully continued after the reunification, and she was actually offered a job in the administration as a member of the CDU, a political position basically, she made the switch at that time from science to the administration, to becoming a politician or an administrator. And I think that can be understood quite easily, because that would be safe income, and I think everybody who has a practical mind would have made that decision just like her. So later that year, in 1990, in October, she actually won her constituency in the first unified elections in the unified Germany, and she became a member of the German parliament. Now, and this is when she was invited into the office of the winner of that election, Helmut Kohl. And I have to explain a little bit maybe about Helmut Kohl. Helmut Kohl is the Überkanzler of the CDU before Merkel. Yeah? He was in power for very long. He is a very impressive guy. I mean, he is tall, very strong. He became fat later, but he's really impressive. I've seen him speak live, and I have to say this guy is quite something. And he was always pretty hardcore. So he always said, if you are on the tip of the tower, you have to expect that all the winds are blowing in your face. That means he knew that he had to take a lot of shit if he is at the head of a big party, and he had no problem with that, He just swallowed it all. Everything just bounced off of him. He called himself sometimes the war horse of the CDU. Sometimes, because people were just fed up with him and they didn't like him, they threw eggs at him, and then he didn't just let his security take care of the situation. He went after those guys. He tried to hit them and to grab them and, get a hold of them. So he was a tough guy, I would say. And on any rate, he was the last patriarch of the CDU. So his word was the absolute authority, and no one really dared to undermine his power. Now, what he wanted from Merkel then was that he still needed to fill a position, and he needed a young face, and he needed a Protestant, and he needed a woman. So I think there were no real quotas, but if you have a big party that should represent all the people, you actually have to fulfill certain criteria there. You cannot have a cabinet of only men. So even at that time back then, you needed to think about the image of the party. So she was then made secretary. Actually, she was offered the position of secretary as secretary for women's affairs and the youth. So this is one of these soft ministries, that are not deemed very important, but she should just, be there for representation, basically. And also Kohl thought probably that if he makes her a minister now, a secretary, that he could trust in her, because she owes everything to him, so he doesn't need to watch his back around her. There were other rivals that he feared more, and he didn't trust those other guys, but he kind of trusted her because he thought she is submissive and weak, and that he doesn't need to fear her. He basically installed someone whose loyalty he felt pretty sure about. So now Angela Merkel actually is already a federal minister in the cabinet of Helmut Kohl. That is actually already a pretty higher position, but no one was really noticing her so far. Only that people said, "Wow, a Protestant woman from the East? That is weird, you know." And she was referred to as Kohl's Mädchen. That means the little girl of Helmut Kohl. And I think this picture where he looks down on her says it all. So maybe it's one of the weaknesses or one of the characteristics of powerful older men, that they would actually become the mentor of a younger woman, maybe just for entertainment purposes. I don't know. And I don't mean that in a sexual way, by the way. I know my audience. Stop it, okay? I just mean, I don't know. Maybe he is having a soft spot for younger women, and he wants to help them in their careers somehow, to further their careers. I think this is a pattern among these old patriarchs that we can see a lot, actually. Now we shall see later what became out of that. Now I have to say, now in the beginning, of course, Helmut Kohl was very popular for bringing about the reunification of Germany, and he promised the people in Eastern Germany blühende Landschaften, that means blooming meadows, yeah? So that there would be economic progress, they would all get jobs, and the Deutsche Mark, yeah, our currency, they really wanted the D-Mark. They said, if we get the Deutsche Mark, then we will stay, and if you don't give us the Deutsche Mark, then we will go to Western Germany anyway, yeah? So, and at the same time, of course, he had to promise the people in Western Germany that it wouldn't become too expensive for them. But everyone knew, of course, you know, the industry in the East is not competitive really. So they had to close a lot of the facilities there, a lot of the factories, a lot of the industry just had to be demolished basically to build up new stuff, because it was so old. It was basically 50 years old, all that stuff there. Well, not everything, but it was definitely not up to date. So he had to make a lot of promises, and in a way, I would say, those promises were kept, just not as quickly and not as easily as people would have hoped for. And so, while in the beginning he was still very popular and everything that he wanted was basically law, you know, then the second election after the reunification, he still won, but people became a little more disillusioned now, and they were becoming impatient. I think they grew more and more impatient. Where are our blühende Landschaften that you promised us? Huh? Where is all that stuff that you promised us? And then, yeah, he was not so popular anymore. And actually, Wolfgang Schäuble, who is now our Minister of Finance still, he was his crown prince, so to speak, and he already thought about what about the election in '98? Shouldn't we have another candidate? Isn't Kohl too old? I mean, hasn't he done his job now? Shouldn't we think about someone who could potentially replace the old patriarch? But Kohl's power and his reputation as the Chancellor of Unification were still shining so bright that actually it was decided against that plan, and Kohl became the candidate in 1998 again. And this election now in 1998 was a catastrophe for the CDU. They only got 35% of the votes. So a crashing defeat, because the people, they were really getting impatient and anxious, and this triumph of the reunification just didn't shine so bright anymore to win him a third election in a row. That was just not enough anymore. So people say it has to get worse before it gets better, and that is really true for the unification process of Germany. So Western Germany had actually to spend a lot of money, and we had to raise a lot of taxes to build up the infrastructure in the East. And the people in the East also suffered because they had lost all their jobs. So the country was really in a worrying state. And all the other European countries were basically mocking us for, oh, why don't you just have some economic reforms, you know? And the Britons were saying, you need more free market economy. What are you doing, Germany, huh? When it was just a problem that the West basically had to rebuild the entire industry in the East, and that wasn't so easy. And all these people in the East had never paid into our systems in the West, and all the pensions and all the social spending, all the healthcare costs, we had to carry the full burden in the West. Yeah? So that is not so easy. Yeah? But our European neighbors, they used this to basically mock the Germans. Yeah? And so that was a very bad situation for the country, and people started blaming Helmut Kohl. And the younger social democrat, one of the hippie generation, the generation of 68, as we say, the 68er, he actually, as a social democrat, together in a coalition with the Green Party, actually, formed the first Rot-Grün, red-green administration of Germany. So after the election, Helmut Kohl became the honorary head of the CDU, and Schäuble, his crown prince, became actually then the head of the CDU. So it was then in November 1999, briefly before the turning of the millennium basically, that a scandal was uncovered. It was a secret slush fund basically that existed in the CDU and that many of its higher-ups must have known about. This was very embarrassing for the party. It raised a lot of questions about Helmut Kohl and Schäuble's role also in this scandal. So they took money from secret donors, and they said that they used this money in order to promote non-socialist parties in Eastern Germany, because they feared that after the unification, the socialists and the communists in the East would just take over and become too strong. So they used this money to subsidize the party a little bit and to help build up conservative party structures in Eastern Germany. And they had to do that with this slush fund because there were no official means that they could use according to our official democratic rules here, but they thought that they were at a disadvantage in the East because they still had the old socialist unity party system pretty much in place. So this is the official version that they give, but maybe he just used that to sort out his friends basically and to give them some money for their loyalty. Who knows, right? And so this was a big scandal, and it basically damaged the reputation of all the higher ups in the CDU. And this is such a crucial point. Without this scandal, Merkel would never have become the head of the CDU. It is this chaos, this state of disarray, because they all had to basically resign. Their names were basically destroyed, their reputation was destroyed, and they were leaderless. They were in the opposition role and absolutely leaderless. And from this chaos, Angela Merkel rose. So she was biding her time until this very moment. And this is her strength. This is always her strength. She can wait. She is not hasty. She can wait for the perfect moment. And what she did then is she wrote a newspaper article for the Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung. So she went to the public. And what she said in this article is that the party needs a new beginning. We must break with the old habits, and the party needs also to distance itself from Helmut Kohl. And she said that the Germany and the German people will be forever thankful, of course, for the achievements of Helmut Kohl with the reunification. But now it is time that the party will learn to stand on its own 2 feet with a younger generation and newer leaders. They must basically drop those old guys. Yeah, this is, at that time especially, that was seen as the ultimate betrayal. That is like a patricide, like she killed her father. Yeah, and this is the moment when she turned against Kohl. I mean, one has to say Kohl was not really active anymore. He was this honorary head, but especially against Schäuble. This is so smart. She basically attacked Kohl, but Schäuble was also involved in that scandal. So indirectly, by not even saying it, she also weakened Schäuble. And Schäuble also being one of the younger people and quasi a generation in between, he couldn't really say no to what she said substantially in that article. It is just the manner that was completely backstabbing. And many of the people in the CDU, they wanted to basically throw her out as some insolent little brat, basically. But Schäuble and others, actually, they thought twice. They thought that they couldn't afford that, and that what Merkel said could actually help the party to rise from this chaos and to basically quell these discussions allegations about corruption and slush funds, when they make a clear cut now, they can leave this story behind and be stronger in the next elections. And this is what they did then. So as a result, in February 2000, Wolfgang Schäuble declared that he will resign as a head of the CDU. Merkel was elected then in April with 879 out of 935 votes to be the new federal head of the CDU party. And here one should say that her role as a newcomer to politics was actually working in her favor, because she then was not an old-time member of the Western CDU, like one of the old boys club or something, who was damaged by this slush fund scandal, but her being a newcomer actually worked in her favor now. So, and this is how, by being patient and by waiting for the right moment and by using chaos around herself as a way to ascend to a higher position, she successfully managed to become the opposition leader then, and to become the head of the Christian Democratic Union of Germany. So, and this is where I will end this talk now. I will continue in the third part, in the next part, of how she took on the fight with Gerhard Schröder then, and how she then became chancellor. So I hope you liked this part, and I hope it clarified some things for you. Maybe it was interesting to see how she actually managed to rise up, and I think both men and women actually can learn a lot about that. So men should not underestimate women. They should not be fooled by their unconfrontative and maybe submissive image or behavior. And also women should know maybe how they can succeed. You know, if you use your sex appeal to rise fast, you normally don't stay up very long. But if you do it like Merkel, and you are smart and you are not confrontative, and you let the old men basically make fun of you, you know, as Kohl's little girl, ho 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 ho, and you just take all these stupid jokes without making a big fuss, and you just wait for the right moment, you can actually rise very far, and you can stay there for a long time. And this is also what Margaret Thatcher did, I guess. Thatcher was also a scientist. She was a chemist, I think. And a lot of things about her rise in a conservative party are very similar to Angela Merkel. So in this aspect, she is compared to Merkel a lot, I think. Alright, so enjoy the rest of your weekend. Servus, Kameraden.